Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Technology for All webinar today. We still have quite a few people logging in, so we'll give them another minute or so, and as soon as I see the logging in slow down, we'll go ahead and get started with our presenters for today. We do have a question already about the PowerPoint on the website. I apologize. We did say in our reminder email that that was posted on the website. We had some delays with getting it up, and so it's not on the website yet. We should have it up in the next day or two, and again, I apologize for not having it available as we had said it would be today. And just a few more seconds, looks like. Okay, well, the logging in appears to have slowed down, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm Kim Brown with the Rural Institute Transition and Employment Projects, and I'll be your moderator for today. Today's webinar is sponsored by the University of Montana Rural Institute Transition and Employment Projects and is funded in whole or in part under a contract with the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. The statements shared in today's presentation do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the department. All of our attendees today are currently muted. If you want to ask one of the presenters a question or make a comment, please type your question or comment into the chat box. If you don't see the chat box up on your screen, look on the upper right-hand side and you should see a small orange arrow. If you click on that, it should open a box that will allow you to type in questions or chat. So please use that if you have any questions or comments, and only you, myself, and the presenters will be able to see what you've typed into the chat box, and we will read off the questions so that other audience members know what's being asked. And we will have one question and answer period at the end of the presentation. Some of the presenters may choose to take a few questions after they give their presentations as well. For those of you who requested Montana Office of Public Instruction renewal units when you registered, we will email those to you after the webinar, and it can take up to a couple of weeks to get those emailed out. Please note that you do have to have pre-registered to receive the OPI credit, and unfortunately we are not currently able to issue other kinds of attendance documentation. Today's session is being audio taped for the Rural Institute Transition and Employment Projects Resource Library, and I'll put that URL or website address in the chat box a bit later today. The slides, as I mentioned, unfortunately we don't have those posted yet, but we will get those posted to the same website in the next few days. So if you're interested in downloading the presentation and saving the slides, they will be up there in the next couple of days. We do encourage you to visit the webinar archives on our website. Over the years, we've provided sessions on topics like customized employment, transportation, healthcare transition, and lots of other transition-related topics that you might find of interest. When today's session ends and you log out, a survey link will pop up. It's only about 8 questions, and we do ask that you take the time to complete that survey. We go through all of the responses, and we do use those to decide on our topics for the next year, and also to try and improve the presentations that we offer. So again, please take a few minutes to fill out that survey when it pops up after the session. We are really lucky today to have 3 fabulous speakers, and I'd like to thank all of them. I'll read you their biographies as each speaker comes up to give their presentation. But our speakers for today overall are Isaac Baldry, Theresa Baldry, and Julie Durner. And again, thank you to the 3 presenters for your willingness to be here today. So with that, I am going to go ahead and introduce you to our first speaker. Isaac Baldry graduated from Custer County District High School in 2010. He attended the Montana Youth Leadership Forum in 2008 and works as the Region 1 Coordinator for My Transitions. He has been a member of the Rural Institute Consumer Advisory Council since 2008 and has presented on multiple webinars for the Rural Institute. He currently is a private contractor for the Pre-Employment Transition Services Technical Assistance Center at the University of Montana. He speaks as a Special Olympics Global Messenger and has been a law enforcement torch run athlete ambassador for Montana. In November of 2012, Isaac was awarded the Executive Council International Athlete Award for his work. He is also self-employed as a national speaker focusing on youth issues and technology. His use of technology was featured in the 2012 spring edition of Apostrophe magazine. In 2004, he received the Yes I Can award in the area of technology. Isaac is a local sports enthusiast. He will often be at the game, whatever the sport. In the summertime, he is busy with his raised garden beds. And with that, take it away, Isaac.
Thank you for tuning in. Technology for all has several different meanings to me. I would like to spend a little bit of time speaking about each one. First, for me, in my personal life, it means technology for all the things that I do every day. My opening slide has a picture of me that was part of an article in Apostrophe magazine, spring of 2012. The article was titled Voice of Authority. Hopefully by now, you've already noticed that I speak using assistive technology. I have used technology to assist me in communicating daily, all the way back to kindergarten. And although this picture is only 4 years old, almost all of the technology shown in this picture has been replaced with new tools to meet my needs. I have a new work computer, but still use the Win software, just an updated version. My wheelchair was replaced in December 2015, and the most important tool there, my communication device, has been replaced by an iPad, loaded with an app called Prolopo to Go. That is what you hear me speaking with to you today. As more people with disabilities are able to go to work, you may see more technology every day being used by individuals to complete tasks. I know I'm helping out the telemarketers here, but something to consider. I don't like getting those calls any more than anyone else. Nothing is more irritating than getting all my technology set up to answer the phone, and it's only a telemarketer. And why, I often let my phone go straight to messages. I am yet to have a digital telemarketer message left in response to my digital greeting. I don't think they think I'm real. But if you hear a computerized voice, don't just hang up. It may be someone you want to speak with. The reason I bring this up is I literally hit the program, "Please don't hang up," into my iPad for when I am making phone calls. Although I prefer to do most of my work communication by email, sometimes phone calls are necessary. I use technology all day long, every day, in my life. I use it to meet personal care needs, mobility, communication, work, and recreation. I would not want to do a day without my technology.
Next slide.
In my next couple slides, I want to talk about different types of technology through pictures and descriptions. First, I want to talk about the picture on the left. I wanted you to see how my sink is set up for my use. The sink is turned sideways with the faucet on the left. It is difficult for me to reach across the sink to the faucet to turn it on. I use my left hand for everything. My right hand is difficult. With the faucet closer, and on my left, I can more easily control the temperature and flow of the water. There isn't anything special about my faucet. The setup is a change in the environment. And not usually the way you would see a sink, but it works really well for me. The watering can in the back of the picture is also just from the plant center, but I considered what features I would need. I chose it because it can sit in my sink under the faucet. When I am filling it, I can see the water level in the top and going up the spout. The handle allows me to slowly pour water for my plants. I like to grow things. In the summer, I have to switch to the hose for my gardens. The picture on the right is of my door in and out of the house. I decided to replace the rope before I took this picture. It was getting a little worn from being out in the elements all winter. There are two things in this picture I want you to notice. The first is the door lock and handle. I went to the hardware store and picked it out myself. I wanted it to be something I could do independently. I don't use a key. It would be too hard to turn for me. I have a numeric lock with a code I have programmed. The handle on the door is also not a turn knob. I type in my code and push down on the handle to open the door. The rope is for when I leave. After I go out the door, I turn and face the door. Then I slip my fingers through the loop of the rope and back my chair up, pulling the door closed. Then put the rope loop back on the door for next time. None of the items in these pictures are specialized equipment. They are assistive technology because of the way I use them. They allow me independence in tasks.
Next slide.
I also wanted you to see a couple examples of technology I use that would be considered high-tech. Although my iPad is a pretty common piece of technology, the app I use, Proloquo to Go, is pretty complex. I consider it a high-tech app. In order for me to use it in work and presentations, a lot of customization has to be done. I often create individualized pages for a specific activity or presentation, such as this one. I consider my wheelchair high-tech, not just because of how much it costs, but because of all the technology within my motorized chair. My seating system is completely adjustable through my hand control, including the height of my seat. Unfortunately, if anything is not working on my chair, I have to have specialized help to repair or adjust the chair.
Next slide.
Next, under Technology for All, I want to talk about the importance of technology being available for all. I wanted to talk about people and how they can help with the access to technology, or be the barrier to the use of technology. Often when someone needs to use technology, it is because they are unable to do a task. The person encountering the barrier has to count on someone else to help them with a solution to the problem. How do people end up being the gatekeepers to technology? When you are assisting someone with a disability, are you helping to remove barriers to create opportunities? Sometimes, we think that an individual has to fail at something for a really long time in order for us to consider how they might be able to do the task with technology. If we are seeing them struggle, can we consider another way to do the task? I want you to start thinking about an individual being successful in a task, instead of how or what they use to complete the task. Is it important how they do the task? Or more important that they are successful?
Next slide.
Because I use technology, occasionally, I am asked to look at how technology might help someone else. I am always disappointed when an individual has never even been shown what technology might help in their life. Sometimes they were given the tool, but expected to be able to use it on their own. When the individual was unsuccessful, we just give up on technology. I hear, we tried it and it didn't work. did we really consider what was needed for success? Sometimes we look at the activity, and if a person uses technology to complete the task, they are not really doing the task. It is considered cheating, or it doesn't really count as work. We have to be careful not to predetermine what a person can do. How does our attitude affect the situation?
Next slide.
This is a great place for me to wrap up my talk. Lastly, when I talk about technology for all, I also want you to consider technology for all activities. Aim high. What have you or the person with a disability always wanted to do? Are we looking at all aspects of life? How do you have fun? Would a tool allow access or independence? With a sit ski, I am able to swish down a mountain. I have a ramp that attaches to my chair and allows me to bowl. And competitively. During bowling season when I am practicing, I can and do bowl with a game score over 200. In these pictures, I am enjoying the beach and ocean, floating and fishing for trout on the Bighorn River, out motorcycling in a sidecar, and trying out an adaptive bike. Think about technology for the whole person, how to create access and participation in life.
Thanks, Isaac.
Great. Thank you very much, Isaac, for your outstanding information. I'd like to go ahead and introduce our next presenter, Theresa Baldry. Theresa is a parent of 6 children, including a son with a disability. Her belief that knowledge is power has directed her areas of employment in the disability field. She has worked for Pluck, Parents Let's Unite for Kids, since 2001 and is a member of the leadership team. Technology has played a key role in her son's life, as you just heard, and as his primary support for the last 20 years, she has needed to stay in front of what he has wanted that technology to do. Theresa began working for Montech in October 2012 to share what they have learned over the years. Currently, she has moved to the Pre-Employment Transition Services Technical Assistance Center, still with the Rural Institute, as a project coordinator. As a parent, Theresa serves on the Disability Rights of Montana Board of Directors. She volunteers with Special Olympics on projects of interest. Theresa has been a member of the Rural Institute Consumer Advisory Council since 2010 and has presented at numerous conferences and webinars as a council member. So thanks for joining us, Theresa. Take it away.
Thanks, Kim. Next slide, please. So I wanted to start kind of with what is assistive technology, or AT. And I set this slide up this way intentionally because assistive technology, the device, and assistive technology, the service, are really equal partners in success. So what do I mean by assistive technology as the device? It is any piece of equipment or device that enables a person with a disability to have greater independence, productivity, and confidence in their home, at work, at school, or in the community. One of the pieces that's not in that definition but that we have to consider is that it can be, as Isaac showed us, something just purchased off the shelf, or it can be really highly specialized equipment. It's that whole spectrum of what technology is. So sometimes schools or staff struggle with when is a tool assistive technology. So I'm going to want to give an example of that. Currently, both Isaac and I need to be able to sign documents, paperwork, and submit them electronically. It's our preferred method. We both are able to print, sign, scan, and email back into someone, or print, and snail mail back to someone. In that case, it may not be assistive technology because Isaac isn't really doing it different. It just takes us both more time, and in Isaac's case, significantly more time. Where it becomes a piece where you look more at the assistive technology is when we're doing things digitally, even though we would both use an app and we both would use a stylus. The stylus that Isaac needs to use is very specialized because he needs a point of contact that can adjust based on the amount of pressure he's able to provide. Do I do a nicer job when I use his tool? Absolutely. But I can grab any stylus, including a pen that I might have picked up at the bank that now has a stylus tip, to sign my name. He can't. He would be unsuccessful with that tool. But given the correct stylus, which would then be assistive technology, he's able to do the same task and have the same results that I would have. On this other side of service, and that equally important piece, so I'm going to start with the definition. Assistive technology service is any service that directly assists an individual with a disability in the selection, acquisition, or use of assistive technology devices. So that's why you can see it being such an equal partner. If we provide an individual with technology with our best guess, in other words, here's what we have on the shelf, or someone we previously worked with, use this tool, we haven't looked at the selection component of that. And the tool may not be successful based on selection. Sometimes we need assistance with acquisition, and Julie's going to help a little bit with that later on. And then the last piece being so important, the use of assistive technology. So when we're working with individuals, and Julie and I both often will do this, we're really looking at the people around the individual who needs to use the tool, that they are adequately trained in the use of the technology so that they can be that direct support for success. That's why, to me, device and services are equal if we're going to have success. Next tool, please. Sorry, next slide. So often I get a call in regard to so-and-so has this disability, and because of that disability, I want to know what piece of technology they need. Technology is not disability specific. It sometimes can be an indicator as to what might be a place to look at or items to consider, but by no means is it simply because of a disability that equals this tool. Something that we want to think about and really highly consider when we're looking at deciding what technology will be trialed is really using a process so that we can be more successful in determining a tool for trial. My preference is referred to as the SET model, SET framework, developed by Joy Zabala. And in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, I do have her web address. If you Googled Joy Zabala, you would find a lot of information on a tool framework that she has set up to kind of help all of us think about how to do this. So what does SET stand for? In the school setting, I'll often refer to the S as the student, but it can just as easily be substituted for self. And what is it that we need under that piece? We're really looking at the who of this equation. What are the strengths of that person? How do they get things done? What are the needs of that person? What are they doing now? How do they do that? What is it that they need to do? We're trying to learn what their skills are, what their interests are, and how we can use that to benefit them. The E is for environment, and that's the where question. Where are we going to use, what environment are we going to use the technology in? Will it be in one place? Does that place stay consistent? Are there changes in the environment? Do we change rooms, locations? Does it need to be portable? All of those tie back to the environment, the where of the task. The next piece being the first T, task. What is it that the individual wants to be able to do? Are there steps within that? And then kind of some of what Isaac talked about, what are the barriers? What is the piece or pieces within an activity that an individual wants to do or needs to be able to do that they're struggling with? After we've done all of those pieces in consideration and gathered information on those, we're really going to look for where, based on what we know about the person and know about the environment and know about the task, do we match up with some tools that are available? And then using a system such as feature match, we're going to choose that last T tool to try and create opportunities for success. The other piece I wanted you to be aware of toward the bottom of this slide is we're also looking for the least complex solution to achieve the desired outcome. And some of why we want to look for that least complex solution is because of what might be even required in services to maintain a more sophisticated system. So not only could it cost more, but the training, the support may be more significant in keeping it successful. So the last piece I have on there is a different way to look at KISS, but keep it simple for success. Next slide, please. So for me, this next one really goes to how we all feel when change is involved. When we're looking at introducing assistive technology, the person we're working with may already have a way that they're completing the task. They may feel or believe that the outcome they're getting is worth the effort that they're putting into it. The idea of changing how they're doing it could be significant to them. How do we feel when someone says, I need you to change the way you're doing this? Very few of us come at change as a beautiful butterfly that's happening in front of us. A lot of times there's a lot of apprehension and concern about what does this change mean and can I do it? So when we're introducing assistive technology, we have to recognize that change is a component of that, and our success is going to be dependent on how we address this change. Are we looking at setting it up for success? Are we keeping it simple? Do we have an understanding of what the expected outcome is? Next slide, please. So I'm going to take a specific task and break it down a little bit based on that individual person. So in this particular task, it's not going to change. We need someone to use a time clock to sign into work. And for the purposes of this conversation, we're going to say that the time clock is a known device. It's not going to change. It's a consistent device for going to work. Now, granted, at some point that time clock could break and needs to be replaced. But for this activity, we're just saying it's one time clock. You need to use it the same way every time, so that's not going to change. The environment's not changing. The task isn't going to change. And we really need to look at the other components then based on the individual, their strengths and needs, what kind of tool support would assist them in being successful. Again, kind of looking at that least complex first. For some individuals, just a written list, whether that be a 3x5 card, something that's laminated that they keep in their wallet, an app in the notes section, just listing out the steps might be enough to help them remember the steps for signing in with the time clock. The time clock I chose to do with this activity happens to be really difficult. It's actually in the picture to the right. For someone else, because it's so difficult in that the buttons are worn and you can't receive clues from the buttons, they might need a video. So if there's someone whose strength is watching how something is done and then viewing it just prior to completing it, a video, which could be a slightly more complicated task to create. So again, that service component might be a next step to consider based on that individual's strengths or needs. Next slide, please. Another individual might need more support in that they need more guidance as to how the name tag should look, which way it needs to be. They might need some direction on the steps that they're going to follow each way through. So step by step on audio support. So one of the apps that I like to use for that, which again is an Apple app, is Pictello. Within that app, I can have a computerized voice, I can record a voice, I can provide the individual visual support, and it can be done either as a story where it goes through completely, or as they complete each component of the task, they're provided that visual and audio to guide them through the task. It may be, in the next picture, that they even need the support of how do I do this each time I'm required to use that time clock throughout the day. So I'm going to need to know how often I need to revisit that time clock. Maybe I need a reminder or an alarm to help me with that. Maybe using that time clock has to be done several times in the day, so I need a checklist of some kind to help me do that. Maybe I prefer that once a task is completed, I can move it to a completed list. Maybe I need a timer for how long in this picture, second slide down, I'll be out to lunch. I only get 30 minutes, but I have trouble managing how long that 30 minutes is. Within this particular app shown, which is ChoiceWorks, I'll show hopefully another app a little later on, First Then Visual. It allows me to create a timer for how long that activity would take place, and then what I need to do next after completing that task. So you can see within one activity how making several different changes could support an individual in being successful based on, first, what are their strengths and what are their needs, and then selecting the tool that will support them. Next slide, please. In this slide, I chose this on purpose because I wanted us to think about when we're creating tools or creating a method of learning a skill, are we also remembering that that skill may need to move from environments? The example on the screen is teaching the dollar over method, which is something that several individuals may need to use in order to handle money. When we teach this, we often teach it in a classroom or in a teaching setting where they're learning that skill. But if we have a whole sheet of directions for how they're going to accomplish that, have they learned to use a tool that then can be portable or moved to where they would use it in general life? If we taught the skill and they're acquiring the skill, could we look at, in this situation, moving to a number line that was laminated and kept in their wallet so they could pull it out and, using the same method and the same skill, then move from using a full set of directions to a tool that's now become portable to the multiple environments that they may need to be able to use. The skill was still the same. We just altered it a bit in that tool so the tool became portable. Next slide, please. In this slide, I kind of wanted to talk some about when we're looking at technology. A lot of times people will jump on a particular platform and say, well, they have to switch to this or they have to switch to that, or I'm only familiar with this. We really need to look at the individual user and sometimes the support staff as to where their comfort level is. Is there technology that the individuals are currently using that they feel comfortable with, that they've experienced success, and so they're a little more comfortable in looking at how could we adjust this tool. An example being that Isaac started with an iPhone for a specific purpose, and he selected that iPhone. More recently, due to increased desire for independence in charging, he switched to a Android-based phone because he could drop it on a charger and not have to do the fine motor movement of plugging it in. I was really uncomfortable moving to the Google. For him, the weight of what he wanted to be able to do independently was more important than my comfort in the tool as his AT support, because he figured we would figure it out. But really look at what they're comfortable with and what's important to them when you're making that decision about technology to trial. And I keep saying this word trial on purpose. A lot of times when we're wanting to acquire technology, we need to take the time to trial technology. So we're trying it out and determining whether or not we have success for that tool before purchasing it. Montech in our state of Montana can be a great resource for that. Many states have an assistive technology center where technology can be trialed. Sorry, looking for my notes here. We also need to, if they're currently using something, look at what might be available within that technology that they weren't aware of yet. Are there some built-in features on that least complex solution that might be something they're already comfortable with that we could look at trying? It's not uncommon for someone to want to test out speech-to-text. Within phones currently, or tablet devices, there's lots of ways to try out speech-to-text and see if it's a tool that is beneficial without actually purchasing a specific tool just to do speech-to-text. So it's something we can look at trialing and using tools we have start with. I love the idea of using FaceTime as a job support so that an individual doesn't necessarily have to have a one-on-one person glued to them, but how could they have, as we've faded, support through FaceTime for things that come up within that work environment that might need some assistance, but it didn't have to be a person there all the time with them in case something came up. We taught them there was a tool available in things that they have. A camera can be another great one for just capturing information that you see, or if you're struggling with where your location is, sending a picture of where you're at. Did we provide the training to use a tool in something you're already comfortable using, such as your phone? Next slide, please. So I want to, I often get requests for what are some apps that you would recommend. Although I am most comfortable at looking at apps within the Apple market, do realize that the Google and Android market are coming along rapidly, and so if there's something that you're wanting to do, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be an Apple device, especially if that's not your comfort area. The only place I'm really seeing a significant discrepancy between the tools is when you're looking at something for a communication system built into a phone. I'm not seeing apps currently on the Google and Android market. There's some that are being worked on, and we're watching that, but we're not seeing ones on that market as impacting as on the Apple market. So when I'm looking at an app, things that I'm going to really want to consider is, does that app create independence? Does it have the potential to do that? Is it going to be fairly easy to program? I'm not going to want to spend a lot of time learning the app that's not intuitive for programming support of an individual. I'm hoping that we may actually be able to have the individual at some point assist in programming of activities that they want and need. Isaac does a lot of his own programming now within Proloquo to Go. If we hadn't done it side by side, he might not have been as comfortable at trying that. But at this point, if he would need to, he's able to create the pages on his own through practice. So not only do I want to make sure that it's something that's easy to program, another feature that I like to look for is that it's shareable. Is there a way to share that information or store it? So a couple of the apps that I wanted to talk about, the first one is called Can Plan. And Can Plan can really be used to break down tasks step by step sequentially. It has the ability to put in photos. You can put in optional text, audio. It has scheduling and reminders built into it. So it's really meant to break down those tasks and provide the supports that an individual might need to assist in completion of a task or learning a task. Ada Reminder happens to be one of the few audio reminders that allows for you to hear that reminder. And a couple important pieces. One is you do need to be up to iOS 9 now for it to be working. It's a compatibility issue. And you also have to look at enabling notifications within your settings to allow it to work. So there are some little pieces that need to be done in setup to ensure that it works correctly. But it allows you to record a message, or you can use a song that's on the device or a sound that's built in, and it allows you that ability to create reoccurring reminders. So if something has to be done hourly, taking medication on a daily basis, it allows you to create that sound reminder, which might be really important in that S component of set for an individual. It also has an alarm for pieces that can be in there, so the waking up piece, and it syncs to your calendar, so it can be added into your calendar for an activity. Really liking that one. Next slide, please. So back when we were looking at ChoiceWorks, another one that's out there that provides lots of formats for the breaking down of tasks is one called First Then Visual HD. And the most recent version really does have the most support for doing activities, or that might be a feature that someone would need. So this First Then schedule allows you to create First Then boards. You can create visual schedules. You can create social stories, choice boards, and you can even do some video modeling because it allows you to upload videos. You can set a timer for the completion of a whole task. So if someone needs to get ready for work or needs to spend time on a specific task, but they have trouble with how much time, you can create a timer either for completion of the whole task or by each step of that task, how much time you have to complete it. I really find that to be a helpful piece within the app. There's also customization in the way you view the app. You can view it one image at a time. You can have two images. You can have it as a first then. You can have it as a scrolling checklist. You can drag and drop completed items. And again, this is one where you can then print these boards as a backup. If for some reason technology you're using on it went down, you can print the boards, and you can share these boards. So it's got a really nice ability to do that in an app that currently on the Apple market was $14.99. Crafter is the next app on the right, and it's a free app. It is a reader and generated of QR codes. And QR codes are quick response codes. Often we might see them in advertising or at a grocery store for more information, but they give you a way to create within a small image a way to access a significant amount of information. This morning I had to laugh to myself because I knew I was going to talk about this today, and people are actually starting to put QR codes on their tombstones so that family members or people just visiting a cemetery can learn more information about the individual that is buried there. So you could have a small video, you could have pictures telling more about this person. I thought that was so interesting that that's a shift that people were starting to make. When I'm looking at it, I'm really looking at it in a couple ways. So within a home, if someone wanted to make coffee every day, but remembering how to make coffee every day was too big of a task, a QR code placed on the coffee maker could provide either a video, it could provide a step-by-step list, depending again on what that individual needed. The piece that would need to stay consistent is making sure that they knew how to access a QR code and that they knew when they saw that within their portable device they had a way to scan that code and get information. Just like in home, it could also be transferred to a work environment. If the jobs you do rotate between settings, what you need to do even could change on a daily basis. So scanning a QR code could give you information for your daily work. What is it that you need to complete today? How did your schedule change? And a QR code is easily created for information. Even when I just typed in QR code to get a definition of what it was, the ability popped up on my screen to right there take that information and create a QR code. So I hope to see them used more. They're still not quite used as much in the disability culture, but I have some teachers who've used them for, seems like science labs are one of those really hard to capture and recreate activities. If a science lab is videoed, it's now available to a student who missed. A QR code could lead to an assignment, a lecture for review, a movie that needed to be watched. Next slide, please. So in wrapping, these were things I wanted to make sure that I came back to. I cannot stress enough the importance of AT service. It really needs to be there in order for us to have success. It's something that without it, often tools are abandoned. When we're looking at tools, how did we customize that tool to make it their own? I especially think of this when we're looking at handheld devices, whether that be an iPhone or an iPod Touch. How did we customize it so that it is their own? I saw one young lady who really blinged it up. That made it her own. Have we considered wallpaper on the phone so it's something of comfort to them when they view it? Have we considered folders? So maybe there are specific apps or activities that can only be done during break time. Things used for work or for communication could be in one folder, and things for break could be available in that folder that could only be accessed during that time. We can take down the amount of information and remove some of what might cause confusion. If we're looking at using that device for communication, have we made sure that addresses are programmed into the contacts for that individual so that they know how to FaceTime, that they know how to email or text? If that's a component we're expecting them to do, have we made sure that those features are loaded into the device? Such as with ADDI Reminder, have we looked at what notifications are going to pop up? Are those distracting or helpful, and how are we somewhat controlling that process for the benefit of the individual? Assistive technology is an ongoing process. What the skills of an individual are can change. What their needs are can change. What the barrier was could change. How many environments or what the current environment, all of those pieces can change. So AT becomes an ongoing process. It would be really nice if it were just a prescription. Here's the tool you need, and this will take care of it forever. That's just not how assistive technology works. It's really that ongoing process. It will always need to be reviewed for outcome. And lastly, AT, assistive technology, can promote independence and functionality in school. I'm not sure why it says home, employment, community, and recreation. So as Isaac said very well, really look holistically at where all technology might be a benefit to the person. That's a wrap, Kim.
Great. Thank you, Theresa. So are there any questions for Theresa or Isaac before we move on to our next speaker? And if you do have a question, remember you can just type it into the chat box or the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll give just a minute in case anybody's trying to get a question typed in. Okay. Well, we'll have another question and answer period at the end of today's presentation. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our next presenter. Let me go ahead and move to her slides. Julie Derner is a certified speech-language pathologist and has a bachelor's degree in elementary education. Julie has worked in the Bozeman Public Schools as both a special education paraeducator and as a speech-language pathologist. She has also worked in adult and geriatric rehabilitation in Montana and in the greater Seattle area. Her experience with augmentative and alternative communication, AAC, is extensive. She has performed AAC evaluations and provided treatment for individuals of all ages in a variety of settings. As clinic coordinator at Montech, Julie offers demonstrations of assistive technology and comprehensive evaluations to persons throughout the state. Take it away, Julie. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
You sound great.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks for having me today, and welcome everybody, and thanks for being interested in assistive technology. It's a wonderful field, and it's a very rewarding industry to be working in at this point in time. And I really miss working with Theresa, and she's a wealth of knowledge, so I always try to keep her slides. Well, the first thing I want to say is that introduce you to Montech and what we do here at the University of Montana. We are a federally funded program, and there is actually a program like ours in every state. So if you're listening in Idaho or Wyoming or Hawaii, you have an AT program in your state. It may or may not be affiliated with a university. So you can always Google AT program in Hawaii, or you could go to the resna.org website and find your own program there. Here in Montana, we are located in Missoula, and we provide a variety of services and related to assistive technology. One of the things that we are most proud of is providing Montanans the ability to come to the clinic and try out technology that may help them overcome some barrier or be able to perform a task that they couldn't perform prior. We also provide this service to anyone in the state. You just need to be a resident of Montana and have a pulse, and you are welcome to use our services. But you don't just have to come to Missoula. We do loan out equipment to consumers across the state. It's a 30-day kind of a try before you buy option. And the nice thing is we pay to ship it to you. The only cost to the consumer is they do have to pay to ship it back to us or find other transportation so that it can be returned to our clinic. We also provide consultation, assistive technology training. We provide technical support, and we can be hired to do evaluations. Well, it's all fine and dandy when we can do all those things and we find something wonderful for the consumer and they say, yes, I've tried it for 30 days, now what do I do? Or can I buy it from you? Or where do I get it? Or can I borrow it for 6 months? Well, because of our federal, our grant and the way that our grant is operated, we are not allowed to give out equipment. We can loan it for a long-term loan of 6 months if the equipment is older and not being produced by the manufacturer any longer, but is still usable to a consumer. But we really do try to create not only the hope that this technology is going to work, but the proof. They can take it home. But as you see on my next slide, go ahead and you can move to my image. We really want to build the bridge between what people have learned through using Montech and actually having access to the equipment and getting it so that it's theirs. So that I wish that we had someone on staff who focused primarily on just finding funding, but unfortunately we are a very small staff. But we are more than welcome to, or more than willing to welcome the opportunity to help people. Most people, when they find assistive technology through our program, they oftentimes think that their insurance, their private insurance, or maybe their Medicare, Medicaid would pay for the item. Oftentimes, 90% of the people will find that that item will not be purchased by insurance. So we have a very high amount of people who find these great assistive devices and then walk away brokenhearted because insurance says they're not going to pay for it. There are certain rules as to how insurance will pay for items. So let's say I have a consumer who needs new controls on their powered wheelchair, and it has to have Bluetooth so that they can use Bluetooth to control the mouse and connect with their computer. Well, what happens is insurance will pay for that powered wheelchair every few years, depending on what age the consumer is. But what about the controls? Technology is changing so quickly that we oftentimes forget that the controls and what the options are on those powered wheelchairs can change more quickly than how much the person needs the powered wheelchair and what the features are for seating and mobility. Now we're looking at the cost of additional technology. So that is one area that's quite gray at this time. What we're finding is that if the technology is newer and that the insurance company has not been asked for that technology before, they do consider funding it. And then if you have a consumer or a person who needs alternative and augmentative communication devices or a new speech generating device, insurance, that is what I call the golden item. When we're talking about insurance coverage for funding, 90% of insurance policies cover speech generating devices on behalf of the user, or at least up to 80% of the cost. So that sounds pretty good until we look at the cost of a speech generating device. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of companies like Tobii Dynavox or Prankiromic or Lingraphica, but they all make speech generating devices. And if you look at their websites, they range in price from $4,000 to about $15,000. So when we start looking at $12,000, 80% is paid, but then what about the remainder? So when we get to the next slide, I'll talk about other ways to fund AT besides insurance. Thanks, Kim. So I put up this table so that people who say, oh, insurance won't cover it, but if you look at this table, you have some hope. You can see at least 14 other options where we can start looking for support, financial support to purchase equipment. So here at Montech, if you look in the upper left corner, it says organizations like MATP. MATP stands for Montana Assistive Technology Program. That's us here at Montech. And we are not allowed to give away money, but we do have a financial loan program, which I will talk about in the next slide. So the Lions Foundation is an organization that you can look to for funding. I actually, when I worked in the Bozeman Public Schools, I had been assigned as the speech-language pathologist to 3 self-contained classrooms in 3 different schools. And I walked into all of these classrooms and realized that either one, they had a closet full of equipment they didn't use. 2, they had equipment that they could use but they didn't know how, or there wasn't the students didn't have access to the appropriate equipment to help them with vision, hearing, speech and language. I had a laundry list of things that were missing. So I went to the special ed director and I said, well, I need this equipment. And he said, well, Julie, you only have $250 in your budget for the year. And you know it, but you always want to ask. Don't ever not ask. And so I went away and I came back later and I said, well, can I ask other people for money? Would it be all right with the public schools if I asked other organizations for money? And he said, yes, that'd be fine. Now, had I not asked for permission, I don't know that I would have gone about doing it. But I went to the Lions Foundation, who their motto in the Bozeman area is to help with vision and hearing. But I went to them and I said, I have students who need help with a lot of different types of functional limitations related to various disabilities and impairments. Can you help me? And they said, how much money do you need? And I said, I'd like $5,000. And rightfully so, when we look at all of these funding sources, they're not going to just hand over the money. So the Lions Foundation sent a group of people to follow me around in those classrooms for 2 days. And after 2 days, they decided that I could get the $5,000. So when we think about organizations, and maybe these organizations have a certain mission, don't forget that you can just possibly work with that mission statement or go beyond it, which is what we did in this case. Now, the next possibility is insurance options, and that we talked about. There, that's what everybody thinks is going to cover their equipment, and then they find out that it doesn't. But one thing that is required is a statement that equipment is it's a medical necessity. So whomever is providing the evaluation for the technology, if they are not a provider under Medicare, Medicaid, if they don't have a provider number, they cannot write the letter of medical necessity. So you want to work with people like a licensed speech therapist, occupational therapist, or physical therapist to procure as much of this equipment as possible through insurance, because it's those licensed professionals who are enrolled as providers who can write the letter of medical necessity. Now, one of the things I'd like to point out at this point in time is that When I asked the Lions Foundation for money, the total process of time from me asking to me purchasing the equipment, the total amount of time was 2 months. Then I had to, for a private practice client, go through the letter of medical necessity, and that process took 6 months. And sometimes it takes longer because you'll get a denial. The denial letter could come just because of wording. So when you do go for funding through insurance, remember that you'll want a licensed professional to write the letter of medical necessity, and you will also want to be aware of the time frame you could be working in. So if we look to the next box, we're looking at federal and state programs. And one of the things really important for our individuals who are transitioning from high school onto into the workforce or college or whatnot is vocational rehab. And now the pre-ETS program here at the university provide excellent support for people who are transitioning and possibly using assistive technology. Vocational rehab in Montana will hire us here at Montech to perform an assistive technology evaluation, and then through that evaluation we determine what AT devices best meet the needs of the person that VR is working with. And Theresa brought up a really important part of what we do here at Montech, and that is feature matching, and being able to recognize as best we can what features a device needs to have in order to make the task at hand as easy and as accessible as possible for that person. So VR works beautifully with clients in helping find resources like Montech to make vocational and academic goals achievable. The nice thing about vocational rehab is if we determine that there are specific devices and services related to assistive technology that this person requires, VR will pay for that equipment. Now there is an agreement. Sometimes they'll pay 100%, but at the end you have to return, at the end once they've met their vocational or academic goals, at the end they return the equipment to VR. Or VR will purchase 50% of the cost and you purchase the other 50% and you get to keep the equipment. So there's different ways of procuring the assistive technology. If we keep looking on that box, and some boxes I'm going to spend more time on than others, but one other really important piece in this third box in the top row is Medicaid waiver. We find that equipment that is not purchased by insurance is often families are able to purchase through Medicaid waiver. And I understand in Montana right now there have been freezes at times, and I know there are wait lists. So if you know of someone who would benefit from Medicaid waiver, I would say don't hesitate to get and to begin the enrollment process. Of course, we love working with special education departments here in the state of Montana. Teams of educators and families and students use our services, and through special education, oftentimes a child can receive assistive technology purchased by that school that they attend. The one thing to make sure we all know about in that case is that when the child graduates, the school has the right to keep that equipment at the school. So that is one thing to keep in mind. They don't always keep it, but they have that option. So if the child needs a computer with Dragon Naturally Speaking that can be mounted to their chair so that they can move through junior high and high school using speech recognition, what happens when they graduate? Well, the school district could technically take that equipment, but the good news is it doesn't always happen. It's on a case-by-case basis. I also really look to advocacy groups for funding. One group in particular that I've been working with a lot lately are clients with with ALS. And the ALS Society here in the United States has regional offices, and then at those offices they have funds, and they also have equipment reuse programs. So I look to advocacy groups not only for is there funding, but how about reuse? Do you have this piece of equipment? And so we look to groups quite often for funding, or at least equipment. Then if you go to the second row, one of the other groups that we work with heavily is the Veterans Administration. And they don't typically purchase computers. However, I do work with a number of veterans who have had computers purchased for them because of visual impairment. So the Veterans Administration has an excellent program here in Montana, and I believe in every state, and it is for visual impairment. And they oftentimes not only pay to have a veteran come to our clinic for an evaluation, they will also pay for additional training, and they pay for all of the equipment. It's a very thorough program and very supportive program for assistive technology for veterans. I think I'm almost running out of time, so I'm leaving a lot of the rest for you to look at. I wanted to touch base on the bigger ones. I would also like to maybe bring attention to the fundraising activities like Kickstarter and GoFundMe. You wouldn't believe how successful those campaigns can be, and it also can happen in a very short amount of time. So we always consider encouraging people to look up that avenue, especially if you have supportive friends and family. Let's move to the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about our financial loan program here at Montech. We years ago paired up with RDI, which is as you can see, it's a bank or community lending service. And we paired up to create a loan that was designed for people with disabilities who are, we are aware that they may not have perfect credit. We are aware that they may not have a steady job or be able to be employed. So this was designed for people, the individual or the family, to apply for a loan, and our loans are anywhere from $500 to $50,000, and these loans can be used for things like purchasing and modifying a van, installing a ramp and a lift in a home, doing home modifications, smart home technology, vision technology, you name it. Whatever it is, as long as it's assistive technology, then you should apply for this loan. It's very, the persons that have applied for the loan have been successful. One thing to keep in mind, and I think I kind of alluded to this before, is no one just gives away money. So with this loan program, I do want to just give you a heads up that the application is long. And if I could shorten it up personally, I would. But it's a little bit longer, so you want to make sure that if the person applying for the loan needs assistance in filling out that application, that they either get help locally or they can contact us. So if we go to the next slide, I like this statement in relation to our loan. I've never received a loan before. I have no credit history. Will this affect my ability to get a loan? And you wouldn't believe how often I hear this. Either they have poor credit history or no credit history. And so what I love about the loan program through RDI and Montech is they look at the entire story. And they determine that credit history does not mean they can't participate in, a team effort to successfully get the loan and repay the loan. So it's really designed for individuals who, you know, we don't want people with disabilities to think that the loan review has not thought about their particular instance. So I guess next slide, Kim. I live by this statement: where there is a will, there is a way. And I oftentimes here at Montech, as part of the AT program, will often write letters of support for individuals who have used our services. So I have written letters to the Brondum Foundation, Lions Foundation, private insurance. So when you're out there and you're wondering about how do I fund this, where do I even start, I want you to call me or call us here at Montech, because we do it regularly. We have that conversation often with people all over the state. So also, I just wanted to remind you that you can come into Montech and schedule an appointment to try out the equipment yourself. You can visit with us and learn more about our equipment loan program. You can sign up for an account with us on our website, which I didn't put on here, I can't believe it, and borrow equipment to try for 30 days. And of course, we are always available for trainings, consultations, and evaluations. I did put up our main number there. That's our main phone number, the 5751, or the toll-free number, 5511. I think I can wrap it up a little bit early, Kim.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Julie. So we'd like to open it up at this time for questions. If any of you have questions for any of our three presenters today, Isaac, Theresa, or Julie, please feel free to type those questions into the chat box. And while you're typing, I'll just cover a few housekeeping things. First is a reminder that a short survey will appear on your screen when the webinar ends, and please do take the time to complete that survey. The next webinar of our series through Children's Special Health Services is called Puzzle Pieces: Putting Together the Picture of Adult Life. That will be held on May 10th from 1 until 2:30 Mountain Time. And the flyer and registration information for that will be sent to Montana Transition email list members in the next couple of weeks, and it will also be posted on our website if you're interested in reading more about that particular webinar. The PowerPoint slides for today will be posted to our website in the next couple of days. Again, I apologize that we weren't able to get that up ahead of time, but we will have that up on our website within the next couple of days. As well, the recording for today's session will be posted on our webinar, on our website, and I have put the URL or website address for our training calendar page in your chat box window. You can also just Google Rural Institute Transition and Employment Projects, and that will take you to our main page, and you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen one of the buttons you can click on is called Training, and that will take you right to our training page. The recording for today's webinar will probably take 3 or 4 days to get posted, so if you're interested in having other people listen to the information, please invite them to visit our website and they can listen to that recording. We do, let's see, maybe have a couple of questions coming in. Let me look. Thank you to the presenters, very informative resources, and thank you all for your presentations and tons of great info. What was the name of the main program Isaac uses? We'll let Theresa or Isaac handle that question.
Right now I am speaking using an iPad in Proloquo to go.
So for clarification, it is Proloquo to go.
Any other questions for any of the presenters?
Well, we're waiting to type in. I reviewed my notes because often although I think I have them in front of me, trying to keep up with my notes and my mouth doesn't work. So the piece that I wanted to add in there, that on that change slide, one of the pieces that can really help with change as well is that the individual themselves, the student or self, has been part of the process in determining what assistive technology will be trialed. So if their voice, their choice is part of making a determination and they don't feel it's just your idea or someone else's idea being thrust upon them, that they feel they were part of the process using a tool, you'll often find that success goes, or change can be a little easier.
Great, thank you, Theresa. Any other comments from Julie, Isaac, or other comments from you, Theresa?
Oh, just thanks all for being a part of the webinar.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our presenters, to Julie, to Isaac, and Theresa. And thank you to all of you who spent time with us this afternoon at the Technology for All webinar. We look forward to seeing you at our puzzle pieces session as well. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.